Hi there, and welcome to Access Module 2. You can follow along in your book starting on page AC65. So, we are going to take the information that we learned about in Module 1 and add on. So, currently, I have open the database that we started creating in Module 1, and we will start talking about how to create queries from scratch in this chapter. So, let's start with that. So to create a query in Design View, you look under the Create tab and find Query Design. That will open up a window like this that will prompt for you to choose which table or tables that you will be using in your query. So in this instance, we are going to be using the account table. So I'll click Add and then close this box. I will resize this window right here so that I can see all the fields. I highly recommend that you do that. And then I double click on the fields to add them to the design grid, which is down here at the bottom, to create my query. So I need to double click them in the order that I want them to appear in the query. So we'll start with account number, double click. I'll double click on account name, then amount paid, and current due. So now I've set up a query that will look at the account table and pull out these pieces of information. I'll hit run and let you see the results. You can see each one of my columns, and it's pulling every record, that information from every record. So now I'll switch back to Design View and take a look at the query on this side. And let's talk about adding criteria to a query. This is where queries are powerful. It allows you to put a search term in and only pull back records that meet a certain criteria. So if you notice down here on the design grid, there is a row that says criteria for each one of the columns. So for instance, if I want to find an account number that is JM323, I can type that in the criteria row under account number. And then when I run my query, it will pull back the one record that has that information as the account number. So let me go ahead. The other thing is how to save individual pieces of a query. So if I click my File Save As button, I can choose to save this object because it's not the whole database, it's just one little piece of it. So Save Object As, and then I can name my query whatever the directions say. So let me do that really quick. Okay, now once you've created and saved a query, you can close out of this. So I'm going to close out right here on this X. So now I have a clean slate, and if I were using this in a company and I wanted to run the query, I could just double click on that query and it opens it up. I can switch into Design View to change out whatever piece of information that I'm searching for. So now let's talk about wildcards. Wildcards are used when you want to search for a piece of information within fields almost. So they're symbols that represent any character or any combination of characters. And it's an asterisk is considered a wildcard. So for instance, if I want to find all of the account names that start with the letter K, if I just type in K under account name and run my query, nothing will return because there is no account that is just named K. But if I use that wildcard after the K, it's going to search for anything that starts with a K and has something after it. It doesn't matter, but it does have to begin with that K. And then when I click run, I can now see that I have two different records returned. Let me go ahead and save that. Okay, now what about using criteria for a field that's not included in the results? Let me look back at Design View. I'm going to erase out this criteria right here. And then I want to add another field to this query, and that is the city field. So I'll double click on city. So right now, if I run this query, I'll get all of this information and I'll have a bunch of different cities in my results. But let's say, from a company standpoint, I want to know which companies in a certain area still owe me money. Maybe I want to send somebody out to try and collect that. Maybe I just want to make a phone call, something like that. But I need to know everybody in a certain location that owes me money. So under city, for the criteria row, if I type the name of a city, say Granger, and then I run my report, I now see everybody, all of my accounts in Granger, the city, and how much they owe. Now, if you notice over here on the side, we see Granger multiple times. If I'm running a query for Granger, I really don't need this field to show up because I automatically know that that is the city where all of these things are from. So if I go back into Design View and I uncheck this box beside Show, it's still going to search for this criteria in the city field, search for Granger in the city field, but it's not going to actually show the results in once I run my query. So here you go. Same information, you just don't have that row there that says Granger. That is how you use criteria for a field that's not included in the results. Now, say I want to create a query that allows me to, when I run it, enter in the name of a city. This would be a very common thing that you would see in databases. You run a query and it opens up a box, you type something in, and it gives you a return of a certain results. So to create that, in order to make that happen, we call it a parameter query. It's a big name, but really all we are doing is we're using brackets. And inside the brackets, we will put whatever we want the user to be prompted with. So in this case, inner city. It's going to prompt us with a box that says inner city, and you type in the city name, and then it gives you the results back. So let me run this query. You'll see a little box pops up. It says intercity right here. This text comes from whatever is in your brackets. So now if I type in Granger and hit OK, it will return those results. I'm going to go ahead and save this query because I want you to see it in action by opening it up and using it that way, because that is probably what you will mostly see in the real world. So I'll say account city query. So this is saved. And then I'm closing that query. Now, say somebody walks up to me and says, I need to know everybody that's in a certain city, how much money do they owe, or what are the names of the clients in that city. I click account city query. It opens up that parameter box that I can open up, type in the name of the city, I hit OK, and then I have my information. That's how you will probably see databases working in the real world with that parameter query. So we've talked a lot about entering text in queries. Let's talk about using numbers. I will remind you of this or say this, that when you enter a number as a criteria, you need to type the number without any punctuation, dollar signs or commas. That will cause issues. So you just type the number straight as it is. So let's create a query and try this out. So I'll go to my Create tab, and I want query design. In this case, I am using the account table, so I'll click Add and Close. I'll resize my field so I can see them all. Two-headed arrow, and click and drag. And then I want to use the account number, the account name, the amount paid, and the current due. Let's say that I want to do a query to know how many or which accounts do not owe me anything. So I'll come down underneath the criteria, and very easily I'll put in 0 as my number, and I'll click Run. There's only one company right now that does not owe me money. Let me go ahead and save that query. Okay, now that's how you use numbers. Pretty easy. Let's talk about using numbers to compare or get a range of information, that kind of thing. We call this comparison operators. Comparison operators sounds complicated, but really it just means using the greater than or less than or equal sign to find specific information. So, closing out of this query, we are going to create a new query using the Account Manager table. Resize so I can see my fields. We want the account manager. We want last name, first name, start date. And then let's say I want to know everybody that has been hired, all the names of the account managers that have been hired after January 1st, 2015. So to do that, in my criteria row, underneath of start date, I am going to use the greater than sign. I want to know who has been hired after 2015, January 1st. So notice how I enter that in. I hit run, and here are the 2 account managers that were hired after January 1st. You can check their information right here and see how that works. Now, another thing that's just using operators. That's pretty straightforward. Another thing you can do with queries is use compound criteria. All this means is using more than one piece of information to get results. So there's 2 types. There's and criteria and there's or. We'll do an example of both. So the first one we will do is and. And in this case, let me go ahead and delete this and get rid of that table. Let's create a new table. We will use the account table. And we want account number, account name, amount paid, current due, and account manager number. Those are our fields. Now, we want to know how many or the names of the accounts that owe more than $2,500 and at the same time also have account manager number 31. So to do this, we come under current due and we will use that comparison operator. So greater than 2,500, I'll type that in criteria row. And then since this is an and criteria, compound criteria, I put it in the same row. So in that criteria row. So I want to know who owes greater than $2,500 and also has account manager number 31. I run my results. I come back with 3 people and their names who owe more than $2,500 and also have account manager 31. Go ahead and save this. Okay, so next I want to demo compound criteria involving or. So we just did and, let's do or. So in this case, I want to know the names of the accounts that owe more than $2,500 or have account manager 31. So instead of putting the 31 in the criteria line, I'm going to put it in the or line. So 2 different lines right here. Now think to yourself, is this going to create more records or less records? The or. So either greater than $2,500 or account manager 31. When I hit run, almost always or returns more results because only one piece of information has to be true. With and, both pieces of information have to be true, but with or, only one. So they either have to have a current due of more than $2,500 or have account manager 31. In order to clear Design Grid, you start with the first field, get a down-facing arrow, hold down your Shift key, and click and drag across the fields that you want to erase. then let go, and on your keyboard, press the delete key, and that will clear the design grid. You could also just start over if you wanted, but this is sometimes easier and quicker to do it this way. So let's talk about sorting data in a query, organizing how that it returns. So let me go ahead and add the city field to the design grid. And then if you notice, underneath of city, there is a sort column. If I click in it first, I get a drop-down box, and I can choose how do I want these things to be sorted when they're returned to me. I'll say in ascending. That means they'll be in alphabetical order from A to Z. And then I'll run my query, and you'll see it'll give me every city name from my account, and they will be in alphabetical order. Now let's say I want to know all my city names, but I don't want them to repeat. If there is more than one company in the same city, I want them to just show that city once. We call this omitting duplicates. So to do this, I'll return to Design View, and in this second field, right here beside city, I'll click in that box, and then I'll make sure that I'm in my Design tab, and I'll click on Property Sheet. This will open up a window over here that gives me some properties for this field. And I'll look through and find where it says unique values. Let's see if I can resize this a little bit. Okay, unique values. Right now it says no. That means they don't have to be unique. But if I say yes, then it will omit any duplicates from my query. If I hit run, now I see every city name, but I only see it once. So once again, to do that, you click in this box that's after the query, you turn on the property sheet on the design tab, and you find unique values and make sure that says yes. Now, what about sorting on multiple keys? Basically, that just means that you want to sort things multiple ways. Let's close out of this query. No, I'm not going to save it. And I am going to create a new query. I am making this, with the account table, and I'm going to add account number, account name, account manager number, and amount paid. Now, I want it to sort by first account manager number, and then by amount paid. So it'll first order it by the number, the account manager, and then it will tell me in order how much each of the clients owe. So I hit run, and you can see now it kind of groups all of the account managers together. So here's account manager 31, and in ascending order how much their customers owe. Same with 35 and account manager 58. Okay, the last thing we are going to talk about right now with these types of queries or sorting queries is how to create a top values query. So this just means that instead of returning all of the results, I'm on Query Tools Design tab, and I'm looking in the return area. Instead of returning all the results, say I only want the top 5 results. Choose 5 there, I click run, and now I only have the top 5 results. So that's a top values query.